And then you hear that really invasive recording in progress sound from Zoom. But good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to welcome everyone to the third ever, I think now, transitioning to the workforce alumni panel for the Arnold School of Public Health with some of our former MPH students. As many of you know, I'm Zach Jenkins, and today we have three different speakers who I'm going to give you a brief interview or overview of. But before we hop into all this stuff, just wanted to give some general ground rules for like what this is going to look like. It's going to be like informal. So don't be, if you got to take out your camera and stuff, that's cool. But like, you're amongst friends, really. It's kind of like a round table setup. But just know that, we're keeping it informal and just having a dialogue truly. But just some general ground rules, please demonstrate respect for our speakers and the other attendees, although I think I know everybody here, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. Keep your mic off unless you need to chime in or unless you need to ask a question. And then feel free to drop questions in the chat or raise your hand and ask questions. Like I said, it's informal. We have some pre-planned questions, but like, we're having a dialogue here. And we're recording the webinar. So like, don't do anything crazy that you wouldn't want posted on our school page. And I'll try and do the same, So anyways, so excited to be here with all of you. So instead of me giving the overview of all of our folks, I'm going to let them introduce themselves because they can do it so much better than me. But really excited about tonight. So McKenzie, why don't you kick us off and just give us a, like your introduction, where you, which program you graduated from and what you're doing now for work and stuff like that.
Okay, so hi everyone, my name is McKenzie Isreal. I graduated from the HISPM program, so the HSPM program, and I got my Master of Public Health. And then now I work as a project manager at HM Health with their core team. So CORE is an acronym for Center for Outcomes, Research, and Evaluation. And there's a lot of transition. So if you can't find me at CORE, maybe you'll find me at Chassis. So that might change like the next week or so, but currently at HM Health with CORE.
Right on. Thanks, McKenzie. Morgan, how about you go?
Yeah, hi guys. I'm Morgan Leggette. I'm also a recent graduate of the MPH program. I was in the HPB program, and I am currently working at RTI, or the Research Triangle International. I am a master's level research analyst. So,
and last but certainly not least, Chantal.
Hey everyone, my name is Chantal and I graduated last year with McKenzie from the HISPM program, and I work at Epic as a project manager and implementation. And if you're not familiar with it, it's an EHR software, and I work on our population health team and do some risk here with CMS and risk adjustment.
Thanks so much for sharing, guys. And for those of y'all that are students that are joining, this just goes to show I'm not just gassing you up. Like, people really do find jobs after this, and they do really cool jobs too. So speaking of jobs, why don't, and y'all can do this in whatever order you feel like, but why don't you share your story, your public health story about how you found your current job and what that whole process entailed?
I feel like Chantal should go first because you got your job a little earlier.
Yeah, I started looking. I honestly had a lot of time over Christmas break, and that's when I was like kind of brainstorming. I don't know about everyone else, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but there was a lot of things that I was interested in. I did a lot of research undergrad and grad school, didn't want to go the PhD route. I worked in nonprofit. I liked it, but I wanted to like not focus on like one specific kind of like area or population. And I had this specific conversation with Zach one time where I was like, I am so passionate about so many different populations that I couldn't focus on one thing. So I wanted something like where I could like impact policies or like systems. So when I was looking for jobs, like I was using search terminology like health communication, health policy, thinking like kind of big level. I was kind of interested in like the corporate route or like healthcare consulting, things like that. And I actually did a project in one of my classes about Epic. And then it came up in my job search and I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And then went through the interview process. It was a little bit extensive, but I ended up here. Happy to answer any questions about that, but it was one of those things I more stumbled upon it and did research after I found it, but that's how I ended up where I am.
Okay, I'll go. So I actually have had 2 different jobs since I've graduated. So when I guess December, I was trying to apply to jobs, but I wasn't as successful because sometimes things just don't work out. Like it's going to take a little bit of time. It's going to take I feel like I started getting more hits after I graduated. Because sometimes when you change even your credentials, like it just flags you more like, oh, this is a viable candidate. This is somebody we want to talk to. So I didn't have a job at graduation, and that's okay. Like sometimes it doesn't work out where you come out of school immediately. Don't feel down about it. Don't feel bad about it. It doesn't mean anything about you as a person. Doesn't mean you don't have what it takes to work in the field. But I didn't have a job, and then just through networking, that's kind of how I got most of my connections. I would definitely say leverage your student status. So I was reaching out on LinkedIn. That's something else that I think is really important, is just your overall brand. Look and see what your online footprint is when people Google you, like what comes up. So I definitely took time to kind of look at my LinkedIn and use that as a tool to get me in certain doors. I was reaching out to like vice presidents of other hospital systems. Like I talked to somebody in Tennessee, and he was like the CEO of their hospital system. So just reaching out and saying, hey, I'm an interested student. They're open to that. They're receptive. And so through some of those connections, I was able to get the job I have now. But the first job that I had coming out of school, I worked for like a smaller cancer clinic. So I worked for Carolina Blood and Cancer Care with their nonprofit. So they had something that was completely different aside of it. And that's really important when you start looking at like compliance. That was something really big that we focused on. So I would definitely say if you haven't looked at anything that deals with compliance, definitely take, a peek at it and see. I think it'd be helpful. But started there. Unfortunately, got laid off. Sometimes grant funding ends, but I had already started applying because I felt like I wanted to do something different. So if that first job isn't exactly what you want, that doesn't mean that you don't have to take it. You can take it and still be applying to other things. And when you find something that you feel like you really like and that you'll be good at, go for it, take the opportunity. And that's kind of what I did. Again, through networking, using my student status when I was in school and saying, hey, I'm a graduate student at USC. I'm trying to get my MPH, was talking to different VPs and use that connection to kind of funnel my application through the process at Atrium. And that's how I got my job as a project manager here. So I think you should really focus on networking. If you're not successful in the application part, focus on your network and you might find something that opens up that way.
Man, so many great nuggets in there. Thanks for sharing both, Chantal and McKenzie. Morgan, what's your story?
Okay. Yeah. So mine is a little bit different. I did not start applying for jobs until I was completely graduated. And it was like maybe a month after graduation. I was just like, I'm not in a rush to do that at all. And so about a month after graduation, I started applying for things. And through my practicum experience, my advisor there really told me to kind of apply at RTI. I really had a hands-on research experience for my practicum. And she was like, I think you should apply at RTI. I think you would be a good fit there. So I kept that in the back of my mind, but I applied for several different types of jobs. Really, it was health promotion for me. So I searched LinkedIn. It was like the best resource for me for health promotion jobs. And that's all I searched. And then one day I was just like, well, I'm just going to give RTI a try. I applied there once, didn't get it. They were like, absolutely not. And I just kept applying over and over again. And then finally they called me for an interview. And yeah, it was a pretty thorough interview process as well. But yeah, I think that's all I needed to share.
So we have a couple of different things going on here. So we have persistence through recommendation. We have job switching, and then I guess I think that's one thing that's really interesting about everybody's public health story in this room is I don't think anybody ever grows up thinking, hey, I'm going to be a research analyst, or I'm going to be a program manager, or I'm going to be a graduate director for health services. And hearing everybody's public health stories, hopefully reassuring to those who have not yet fully transitioned to the workforce yet, to show that it can and does happen and you can find your careers and that kind of thing. So I'm going to go slightly off cuff, but I like talking to people. I've done some podcasts in the past, and something that's already come up twice is this idea of the interview process being interesting. And so Chantal, you said yours was very involved, and then Morgan, I believe you said something similar. So would you both mind elaborating on what was so intensive, or I guess different from what you maybe expected in that process?
Sure. Do you want me to go first, Morgan?
Yeah, that sounds fine.
All right. So it was like a series of interviews I went through. First, I just did a pretty extensive application, And then they invited me to take like a series of tests that had nothing really to do with public health or really healthcare. It was more like skill kind of based. And then once I got through that, I did like an initial call with a recruiter. And then I did like my first, like my final interview was like a couple hours. And it was very like it did a lot of like demonstrations on the tools, and I got to like meet a whole bunch of different people. It was virtual because of COVID. And I had to do like a presentation as a part of my interview. That was kind of like the main part of it. And it was literally the prompt was like, for 10 minutes, speak about anything that you want. And that was like the interpretation. That's what I was given. And so I had to do that and prep that. And then it was like a series of like questions, and I had a recruiter through the entire process, which I didn't really have any other jobs like that, but that's how it was for me. I think I put a good bit of prep into it, and that's probably, I guess, how I ended up here. But I say like my best advice is like put a lot of prep into your interview process. Like I think it is very obvious when people do that and it pays off.
Yeah, I have to agree. Now, my interview process was not nearly as intense as that, I will say. I had no idea that was happening. But I went through a first round kind of phone interview with RTI. And then they called me back for a larger interview. And that interview was like from 11 to maybe 4 o'clock. And it was people cycling in and out of the interview. I think it was like 15 or 20 something people. And that was kind of it for me. I did do a lot of prep. I researched everybody that was going to drop into my Zoom throughout the day. I saw what they were working on, and had some questions for them about the things that they were doing.
And McKenzie, feel free to share as well. I know you didn't say that your interview process was extraneous, but I would love to hear your experiences. I'm sure everyone else would as well, if you want to share.
I mean, mine was more similar to Morgan's process, especially, it's just a series of interviews, and then you have people cycling in and out. So I definitely agree on doing your research on who you're going to be interviewing with and seeing what they're up to, because some of those things are keys that you can pull on, and then that'll make them more interested in you.
Yeah, the studying, well, once you graduate, it doesn't necessarily end. There's just new elements and things to study as you transition. So thank you all for sharing all of that. So here's some questions that were submitted from our panelists. So what type of job opportunities should new grads look for?
I think manager, coordinator. Sometimes it depends on what you want to do too. So like I did project management. I knew that's kind of where I wanted to go, but I wanted to do it in research. So if you kind of know where you think you want to go, you can start looking and seeing what similar titles are. It's just kind of doing the research and seeing even the companies that you're interested in, what kind of roles are they posting, what do you actually have qualifications for. I know some people that came out as consultants. Morgan.
Yeah, I always say I applied for such a wide range of jobs. I applied for just whatever I was interested in. It didn't matter what the title was for me, especially as I got a little desperate after it'd been months after graduation. But I think go with what interests you and what you think, you see yourself being qualified for. You don't have to meet all the qualifications. I didn't meet all the qualifications for the job I currently hold, but just whatever you're interested in, I really think go for. All they can do is tell you no, and that's the attitude you have to stick with.
Yeah, I use mainly LinkedIn to find my jobs, and I more went by like both topic and location. Both were really important to me. I really liked living in Texas when I was an undergrad. I looked there, did like Chicago, New York, DC. Didn't end up any of those places, but I would filter by like that location and then like job topics that I liked. And that's kind of like how I started. And then like I think the more you search, the more you can like see common themes of like jobs. I would say like don't limit yourself. I don't think this time last year I would have thought, I mean, I guess I did think this time last year, but I didn't think that long term this is the kind of role I would end up in, but I'm pretty happy. And I think if something is if something's interesting, it's worth exploring.
It sounds like you could coin that right there. If it sounds interesting, it's worth exploring. I love that. And thank you all for highlighting on job postings, sometimes there's requirements, and what's really required may not be officially required. And so the worst they can tell you is no. I think that's a great nugget to take forward for our current students that are starting to apply. Speaking of starting to apply, and you guys have touched on this slightly, but when did you exactly start applying for jobs?
Yeah, I could go. As I said a little bit earlier, I was very late. So we graduated in May. It took me about a month. I just took some time off. But I would say I was very fortunate to kind of live in Columbia and have a situation where I didn't have to pay rent or anything. So I was kind of just afforded that time to really take my time with things. And that's not everybody's situation. So, I don't see that.
Yeah, I think I mentioned I started applying pretty early. A lot of it was because I had not that much to do transparently over my Christmas break, but I also knew that I wanted to travel and take a break before I started working. And I just was like, I'm gonna get finding a job out of the way before I traveled for a little bit. I do think that honestly that was kind of early, so I would not stress yourself out if you haven't started applying, because I had jobs tell me like you were too early. I got lucky because Epic hires pretty far out in advance, but I think anytime this semester is a good place to start. It worked best for me to kind of like sit down for like several hours at a time and have like all my application stuff ready and do it. I have people that like just focus on one company at a time, but I think you guys are all in a good place to start.
Yeah, I think like Chantal said, like if you start maybe researching at least maybe where you want to be in December, then you can kind of figure out what you might be interested in, but don't rush to do the application because you'll be too early and you'll get those no's, which can be, kind of heartbreaking. So I started then, but I would say you could wait till anywhere between now and I guess really till you graduate. You can wait till after. Yeah, now is a good time in general.
So for those of you that are graduating this May, which is several people on this call, there's no time like the present, right? So another question we had submitted is, what differences exist between governmental and private sector job opportunities? And I know that maybe y'all have not worked exactly in both of those, but just in your perusing of job opportunities, what were the types of differences, if any, that you saw?
I think the government apps probably have more requirements. So whether it be years of experience or like specific experience, so they might want you to have 3 years of federal experience already and you don't have that because you just got out of school, or like more letters of recommendation. Like none of my jobs so far have really asked me for letters of recommendation, but I've seen some of the federal apps that will ask you for them.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention as well. Every federal application I've looked at, a government application, asks for references right off the bat, where I didn't have to give that at my current job, which is in the private sector. Also, the government jobs moved a lot slower. They moved just really, really slow. And I understand that they have like a lot of red tape to go through, but they are exceptionally slow. I applied for some government jobs right out of undergrad. And I heard back months later. So, it's a waiting process there.
And you might still be waiting on a few of those applications too.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with what they both just said. I didn't apply to too many government jobs, but they did take a lot longer. I had people ask for interviews after I had toured and accepted this job. I'd be persistent with those, line up everything you need. Yeah. Definitely worth exploring though. Like there were some really cool opportunities if you dig for the public jobs.
So now this is a really good topic. So how did you guys go about negotiating salary?
Do your research, look on Glassdoor, see what they're paying for the position that you're applying for. And then I would say overshoot yourself a little bit, because when you overshoot yourself a little bit, then you know that they're going to kind of give you something a little bit lesser than that, and you'll still kind of be around whatever your goal range was. But also sometimes you qualify or you have more qualifications than you think you have. So don't lowball yourself, but definitely do your research, look on Glassdoor. I had 2 offers one time, and then I used one against the other to kind of increase that offer. So it's so scary to do it, but there's YouTube videos. You have to practice it in the mirror. talk to yourself. It's so strange to do it, but it's so helpful to hear it in your own voice. But practice it, get on YouTube, Glassdoor.
Yeah, they had asked me in my interview process to like give a range of what I expected. And I did, and they kind of offered the high end of it. So I feel like I didn't have that much room to negotiate my salary. I still tried. I think you should. They were pretty set on they hire masters at a certain level and undergrad at a certain level. I think when you have the conversation of negotiating it, like I came with, this is what I think I bring, this is what I think differentiates me, especially because I knew that a lot of people I work with don't have a master's. I think going in with like a really strong why is important if you're trying to do that. And I recommend like you should. I don't think anyone, in my experience, I don't think you're going to get turned down because you're asking to negotiate if you have solid reasons. So I would definitely recommend trying.
Yeah, I would say I came in to all of my interviews kind of knowing not the bare minimum, what I was hoping to get. So I went into an interview and they would say, what would you like your salary to be? I told them flat out. There's no like, so when they came with me with an offer, it was above that. So, I mean, I could have negotiated, but it was a good ways above what I expected. So there was really no need.
Yeah, well, I think that's something that everyone can remember as y'all go to do this is have, a range in numbers in your mind, because that's going to help dictate what that might look like. And I'm really glad that all of you, even if you didn't directly negotiate, that you kind of knew what you were expecting, so you didn't get lowballed or anything like that. And something that Chantal said, which I would like to highlight, is with the job application process, they're not gonna like say, oh, well, now you're asking more money, so like we're rescinding our job offer. You know what I mean? Like they're expecting you to engage in that process. So don't be shy about advocating for what you're worth. One thing to keep in mind is for some of those research grant positions, there may be more fixed things where you might not be able to advocate for yourself as much because they're like, this is what's in the budget. But regardless, I think that's something that all of you should do as you transition to the workforce. It's a good learning experience, but like, yeah, that's your seat, that's your floor. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's nowhere to go but up typically with your salary wise. So definitely encourage y'all to do that. Thanks for sharing, guys. This is great. So we have a question calling back to more of your last semester type stuff. So was it difficult to juggle the coursework, graduate assistant responsibilities, and the comprehensive exam while you were navigating the application process?
I can start because it seems like everybody else kind of started while they were still in the process. For me, it was difficult. I couldn't do it. I don't encourage it. I feel like if you can try and juggle those things, you really should try. But yeah, I felt like I couldn't handle taking on my grad assistantship and my coursework and all of that and applying for jobs. So I just decided that I was going to focus on being a student for the time. But again, that of course comes with its own set of things.
Yeah, I think the process in itself is overwhelming. And I think I had a GA and I didn't have a comp exam like Morgan, so my schedule was probably a little bit better. But I think it was like a lot of sacrifice, like doing stuff kind of like on the weekends and over break. I kind of wanted it done as soon as possible because it was stressing me out. I think it is doable. It's just, I can't recommend anything more than I just like sat in the library and was like, this is what I'm going to do for a few hours. And eventually the interviews and stuff start coming in. I think that's where it gets tricky. I was fortunate. My GA was pretty flexible. They knew I was interviewing because those just happened during the day. But I think if you don't have like a schedule, it was a lot of planning, a lot of time management during that time.
Yeah, definitely a lot of time management. Trying to schedule your interviews while you're trying to work, that can be difficult. And then trying to have the conversation all the time of like, hey, I have this other thing. Sometimes it's like, okay, another one. It's like, yes, I promise, just one more time. So that can be not the most fun conversation depending on who you work for too, or like just having to take off if you're working for money too, like you have to take hours off or whatever the case is. But definitely time management is important. Scheduling things, having it written down somebody that if it's not written down, I'm going to forget about it. So you might have an application due date that you have to remember, but I think Chantal's method is better to sit down and do it all at once, because if you're like me, waiting and saying, oh, I'm going to do the cover letter today, and then I'll tweak my resume tomorrow, all of that, sometimes it gets lost, but you can definitely wait a little bit longer. I think if you wait later, you'll probably have a better chance too, because then you also won't be in that group that's too early because you haven't really graduated yet. So just wait a little bit later, and then have good time management. Write it down in your calendar, have reminders, find a friend that also maybe wants to sit down and do them all, because I think you can learn from each other too. Like there were people that knew kind of how to like talk the talk, because a lot of it's like corporate jargon. Like you have to say things a certain way to kind of get it to make you stand out. So if you have somebody that you can bounce those ideas off of, I think that helps too.
Oh my gosh, so much great wisdom. I wish I would have listened to y'all when I was getting ready to graduate and stuff like that. Probably gonna save many headaches and some heartache, I think. So, and also friends that are attending tonight, don't be shy about if stuff's coming up or you want to know more about their specific jobs or have other questions that are coming to your mind as our conversation's going. Again, you're amongst friends, and it's just an informal dialogue. I did have a question I think would be helpful for folks. So as y'all are doing like the professional life thing, so what are some of the things that you're really enjoying about your jobs and your professional life? And then maybe what are some of the challenges that you may not have perceived when you first started the 9-to-5 life versus the grad school life?
Morgan, go.
I am still thinking, okay.
Sorry, I threw a curveball at you guys. Yeah, so rewarding aspects of professional life versus some of the challenges.
Okay.
Go.
Okay, you want me to go? Okay. Some things I enjoy not doing coursework. I get off of work and I can just sit around, I can catch a show, I can go to a movie. It's relaxing. I've never had this much free time. I'm always like, oh my gosh, it's only 7 o'clock. That's so crazy. So I definitely enjoy that. I think my job allows for a good work-life balance. That's what I really like about RTI. They're very serious about a good work-life balance. So I'm off most days at 5 o'clock. One thing I could say I don't enjoy is sometimes I know the Zoom meetings, that has to be a thing. The meetings are a lot. I do a lot of meetings, just a ton. But I would say also maybe like the rigidness of my schedule at times. Working a 9-to-5 is very different from when I could wake up at 10 o'clock and go to class at 11 and then, be done with my day at 3 and go back home. So yeah, that's what I say. Yeah. Getting used to adjusting to.
Mine are really similar. Oh,
Go ahead.
mine are really similar. I work from home, so this is my little office space. It's in my apartment. It's a little corner, and we love it. We love our little setup. But I like work from home. I do like the fact that when I'm done for the day at 5, I'm done. Really, 4 o'clock. My Teams is green, but I'm gone. You feel like if you need me, I'm there. But by that time, I've also set task lists. So it's not that I'm logging out early because I haven't done what I needed for the day, but I've already completed all the tasks that I needed. I'm waiting for somebody to email me back or whatever the case is. So I'm very nearby, but also if you don't need me, you don't need me. So I enjoy that. You can go get something to eat later. You're not drained. What I don't like, again, the rigidity of the schedule, but also I guess it keeps me in line. I feel like now I have time to have other hobbies or go do other activities. So it's like, okay, well, I have to get my work done in the 9-to-5. I can't wait to do it. I mean, I can. And I catch myself sometimes in like the late night hours, like if I just do this one more thing, but you have to check your work-life balance. But it is nice to be able to go and do other things and take on other hobbies and start to explore other things that I maybe didn't have time to do beforehand.
Okay, I feel like I have a bit of a different answer here. I think one of the things I enjoy the most about working is I really like my schedule and very like routine oriented. I like that a lot. I feel like I'm actually, and it comes from everything we learned in school, but it actually allows me to feel like I have like a real impact with my work. Like every week in meetings, I make decisions with the help of other people I work with, of course, but it is very much like meetings we are in has like huge impacts on the health system I'm working with, which, and I can see it. I can see our software change like from week to week as we're building it out for them. I really like that. And I feel like I'm on a very creative and innovative team who wants to like be the best at our pop health software. And that's like common across our team. And I enjoy that a lot. I don't probably have super healthy work-life balance all the time. I think there's not as much pressure on me to do it as much as sometimes I want to get things done and I like it because I enjoy my work. I think there's like balance there, knowing when it's okay for you to work more and when it's like you should actually rest. And I've gotten better at that. I'm also starting to travel a bit more with work, which is something I really, really enjoy. And that was one of the big reasons I chose this company. My customers in San Diego. So going out there about 1 week a month. And that was something I was really looking forward to my job. And I think not having work bleed into weekends, like I let school do a lot, is another thing I really enjoy. It's definitely different. And I feel like my work is more like balanced because during grad school, at like any time of the day was fair game to kind of do stuff. Again, that's personal, but I think work life, like most weeknights during the week, if my friends want to go and do stuff, like I don't have class and I don't have homework, it's a different experience, but overall, I think it's enjoyable.
So I think that's something we should talk briefly about is what does really a typical day look like for y'all? Because McKenzie, you mentioned that you work remotely, and Morgan, based on the conversation about lots of Zoom meetings, you may or may not as well. And Chantal, we just heard you're going to San Diego once a month. So if y'all would just briefly talk a little bit about what a day in the life of your work schedule looks like, I think that would be cool for folks as they're imagining being paid and doing these really cool jobs that y'all have.
I can take this one first. On weeks that I don't travel, I normally work like 7:30 to 5:30, kind of depending on the week. I feel like I average like 50-ish hours, which is pretty typical in my team. I have like 3 main areas that I work in. So like my big kind of area, my customer work, I'm on our population health team. And what my job is essentially like the customer buys our software, decides, in my case, they're switching from their previous vendor to Epic, and I'm with them through that process and a little bit after, configuring it in a way that meets their needs. My situation's unique because I'm on a payer. So I'm on like a health insurance company that's installing our software. So I do a lot of work with like NCQA and HEDIS and all of that. So that's probably like 60% of my work. We meet with them twice a week to make decisions about the software. And then I have analysts that help me build it throughout the rest of the week. And then the other area on that customer project is I'm also like the training point person to make sure that like people who are actually going to use the software get trained properly. And I'm pretty involved in that. And then the other area that I'm involved with internally is our risk adjustment tools. So the way that CMS reimburses healthcare is a bit different. They reimburse it based on like patient's illness, basically. And we have tools within our software to help providers document that properly. So I own that internally and I do a good bit of work with that. I got to work with like software developers and technical service people and stuff to make sure that it's moving forward. We have a lot of development coming up for it. That's probably my favorite part about my job, just because I feel like that's where I have the most passion. I run, just like looking at my calendar right now, probably like at least half my day is meetings. And then I figure out time in between them to actually do the work that I'm supposed to do. It can get really meeting heavy. Like today, I had half an hour to work and I was in meetings the rest of the day because it's Monday, but it comes and goes. I also think like the typical day in the life question for my job is different because I feel like I'm always kind of doing different things, which I like. But yeah, I feel like that was all over the place, but I hope that answered the question.
My day is not nearly as intense. I get up I'm up before 8:30, but I usually get up and I'm at my desk by 8:30, which that's why I usually kind of do like an 8:30 to 4:30, because after 4:30, nobody really needs me. If they do, then we kind of finish up or we wrap up for the day. But I started 8:30. I'll check my email, see if there's anything urgent. If that's not the case, then I kind of look at my task list or whatever I've set for the week, whatever goals I want to accomplish. I look at timelines, so trying to see, okay, is there anything that's coming up? Because there are certain reports that are due for different grants. So you want to make sure that you're like looking at it. You also want to check your budget. So always making sure that you're not going over budget or you're not spending too much time, because people will ask questions, or, you're having to run these random invoices. So you need to, keep tabs of what you're spending. And then I do have meetings throughout the day, but most of mine are kind of in that like 11 to 3 hour. And then after that, I kind of have time to work on whatever it is I need to finish up for the day, be it send it last minute emails, submitting grant applications through certain portals, or kind of calling people to help me troubleshoot different items. But after that, that's it.
And my day looks a little different than both of those. RTI, you can work from anywhere in the world. But my contract, I can work anywhere within the United States. So I'm working from home today. Tomorrow I'll be in the office. So I kind of just pick and choose when I want to be in the office and when I want to be at home. But I normally start my day at about 8:30. Mondays and Fridays, they try not to schedule any meetings. Like I only had one 30-minute meeting today. But Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, we're packing it in. We're really getting it in. But most of my day looks like checking our timeline to see, what task I'm assigned to and what that means for what I need to do. Like today, we have a memo going to CMS, which is our client who Chantal mentioned, which is funny. This is a side note, I'm so sorry. We work with risk adjustment as well. We actually take those risk scores in our ACO project and make payments to Medicare physicians. So yeah, I thought that was pretty neat. But mostly it's looking at that kind of stuff, figuring out what deliverables need to get to our client, which is CMS, meeting with that client, presenting things to them. Since we're like under contract, we're constantly trying to improve things. So that's been something they've been really pushing for me to do as a new person, find ways to improve some of the processes they're already doing. So that's what I've been helping with lately as well. And I think that's really it. That's really my day, just meetings and looking at that timeline.
Oh man, this is so cool. I love hearing from y'all. This is really it's so neat to see what y'all are actually doing. Cause I might see it on LinkedIn, but to hear about it is really fun. So we're getting to the end of our question list here. So unless there's other interjections or questions folks want to know about who, as they've come up, as they've been thinking, I would like all of you to leave our attendance with some words of wisdom and hope as they start to begin those next steps of, they're officially starting their career, because you all know graduate school is really kind of the start of your career. But what words of wisdom and hope do you have for students as they take on these next steps in life?
I have a favorite one lately. So my favorite one lately is Know Your Competitive Advantage. And that one, I got that one from Vince Ford. If anybody knows him, he worked at the hospital. He just passed maybe like a couple of weeks ago, but I used to network with him when I was in school. And that was something that he left me with, was know your competitive advantage. So know what it is that you're good at, know what your skills are. And then kind of, leverage that, tune that skill. If that's what you're good at, or that's what you think it's going to kind of give you that edge over the next person, hone that skill in. And it'll be okay. Take your time. It'll be fine. Don't be so stressed out. I feel like some of us maybe put more anxiety into it than we needed to, because it worked out just fine. So it'll be fine.
I have two things to say here. One is not necessarily wisdom, but something I wanted to say earlier. I think what helped me the most in my job search was using LinkedIn and just straight messaging people that had graduated from my undergrad or grad school. I talked to, I think, 4 or 5 people from Epic. Because I was I live in Wisconsin, and that was a huge move for me. And I was just calling people and asking things like, do you like the city? Do you like the job? What do you actually do in your day? Because I think that's something that you can't get from a job posting. I did it for a few other companies as well. People, I think, like to generally talk about their jobs. And if they don't want to talk about it, that's probably also a sign. But I've talked to a couple of people since I started here, just that had same thing, found me on LinkedIn. 15 minutes with someone can go a really long way. And that's really why I ended up here. I definitely recommend that. Even if you're not necessarily sure about a company and you just want to hear more about someone does. that's my piece of advice on LinkedIn. I think my words of wisdom, I think like the process is scary, like transparently, like it's a huge transition, probably one of the biggest you've gone through in your life. I feel like I was really nervous to apply for jobs, so I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. It is kind of like a trust the process. I think more than anything, it is like your life and I wanted some interest in what I was doing. And I think going through the whole thing, I wanted to make sure that I had a job that I enjoyed going to work and I wasn't just like working to make money. And I think sitting down before you apply for jobs and thinking like what kind of things interest me within public health, or maybe like a job that encompasses public health in some way. Like when I took the job here, I didn't know I was going to be on our pop health team. I kind of took the chance that that was going to happen. And then I will share actual words of wisdom. A couple months ago, I took on this like internal role for what I was talking about earlier, and I didn't know if I wanted to take it because I was like, this is scary. Like I'm still pretty new. The guy I took over for, I had worked with him a good bit before he left, and I was talking to my team lead about it, and she said like anything worth doing is going to be scary. And she was like, you kind of just have to go at first. And I feel like even the first couple interviews and the first couple of months working, it does feel like, ooh, like, am I qualified for this? But you are. I think it's hard to get into an MPH program. You guys are all here. It's hard to graduate, and you're going to do that. I think give yourself mercy as you go through the process. Rejection is scary. I think I talked to people a couple months ago about my process. I was like, I probably got denied from like 40 or 50 jobs. And I feel like I ended up with a job I really like, and that's all people get to see. But I did have to deal with quite a few no's, and I had a lot of no's obviously before yeses. And when trying to internalize no's too much, there's like 100 reasons people don't move on with people. So I think every no is one job closer, which sounds so cheesy, but no is also like an answer, not just a no. Yep. That's my rant.
Yeah, so I would say don't doubt your capabilities when it comes to looking for jobs. I think that's something I did a lot. I was like, I don't know what I'm qualified for. I don't know. I thought I'd never make the salary I wanted to make because I was like, I just don't know if I have the qualifications for it. I didn't see myself being in research either. I don't have a super extensive research background. So I was like, I don't know. I knew it was something I wanted to do, but I just didn't think that I would qualify for that role. But I would say don't doubt your capabilities. You have what you need. And so apply for jobs, and of course, apply for every job. As I said, I got a bunch of no's for the company I currently work for, until I finally got that yes. And so, yeah, I think that's all I have to say.
Man, if that doesn't make you excited enough to want to run through a brick wall or apply for a job tonight, I mean, I don't know what will. That's so much wisdom in everything you guys said, and I think that hopefully it's helpful for our students as they're moving into those next stages. I just want to thank all three of you for taking time to do something like this. You know how much it means when you're on the other end of it. So just could not be more proud of you guys. Could not be happier for all of you. And this has just been a sincere treat to see all of you go through the program, find your careers, find, happiness in your vocation. That's just, that's why I like doing my work, because I get to see this whole part of it. And for the rest of y'all that are listening, I mean, I'm going to be tapping your shoulder saying, hey, you were in the alumni panel listening last year. You got to come out and be in the panel next year, because you all are going to find jobs. And you're all going to find jobs that you enjoy, that are careers, not just jobs. So that's my parting bit of wisdom and hope. Really appreciate all of you taking time to do this on what's technically a holiday, although we don't get that off on President's Day. What the heck? But just really appreciate all of you. Thank you all for attending. And we will be in touch sometime soon. Let me know when you guys are back in Columbia, and we can hang out or something. So thank you so much again, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good seeing you guys.
Seeing you.
Chantal. Oh, she already dropped.